Hello, everyone again. Welcome to those of you who have just joined. Next up, we've got Kevin Jump to talk about Umbraco package development for fun and for profit. Kevin, are you ready to take it away?
Yep, I'm with you when you are.
Awesome. Catch you later.
Okay. Let's actually start. Oh, there we go. Full start. Hello, I'm Kevin Jump. I have some important job title, but essentially I work at Jumu, and I make packages. So you might have seen some of these. I make style text box, a maintenance dashboard, local gov starter kit, client dependency health checker, the publishing queue, back office themes, translation manager, usync complete, and we really mustn't forget hip flask for Umbraco 4, the most indispensable tool of its time. Really, you could say I might be addicted to packages, but that would be a bit harsh. I prefer to say I am a professional package developer. I'm probably not a professional graphic designer, but you can only do one thing at a time. I essentially don't work for clients anymore. I only write packages, and some of those packages I sell. So that is all I do. So today, I thought we'd go over package development, why you would develop packages, very briefly how, and really why would you do it. This is a general talk, so there's not a lot of code. I've stripped a lot of code out to fit into the time. There's a little bit, so if you're scared of code, just look away at that point, and then you'll be fine with the rest of it. So why would you build a package? That's the real question. And there's a number of reasons why you might want to build a package for Umbraco. To write less code is probably the best reason to write a package. If you write a package and use it internally in your company even, you can use it on multiple projects and you don't have to write the same code into multiple solutions. It just saves you time. It means you can just install it across the base. So even if you're not thinking of writing packages that other people can see, having packages there which you can reuse across your code base is definitely the number one reason why you should write a package. If you do choose to make your package open source, it's a great way to get other people to write your code for you. Well, let's be honest, fix it. By making your package open source and let other people see it, not only can they help enhance it and add features that you might not have realized you wanted, or in fact, make features you've written better, they do give more eyes on your code. It gets fixed, it gets better. A great reason, and I think we all should be honest here, is that if you write packages and you put them live, other people can see that you can write code. You get little awards, and I've had work from packages, but previously I've got jobs because of packages I've written. So they're a great thing to put on your CV. They're just a great way to really get yourself out there and other people see what you can do. And we'll touch on this a bit later. You can get people to pay for your code if you write packages. We'll go into a great load of detail there, and you'll see whether that's something you think you can do or not. So where do packages come from? Well, the reality is developers like you make packages you like. They're not superstar developers. Most package developers I know do not consider themselves to be amazing developers. They're just developers who chose to write packages. So they, at some point, decided they were going to write the package. I personally don't think the code I write is amazing. It's just that I've chosen to write packages, and the packages are the things that people then see. So how do you become one of these developers who writes packages? The answer is simple, really. You choose to write packages. And there's a number of ways in which choosing to write packages can not seem as hard as it might to you. One thing I like to do is code like everything is a package. So if I'm working on a project that is got something in it that is an add-on, I will develop that in a separate library or folder. So there's a lot of talk when you're building a website, do you put all the code in one solution, or do you put multiple solutions, and which is the best way to manage it? And I know with .NET Core, it's very easy just to put everything in the one solution now, but if you want to turn something you've written into a package, it's much easier to do when it was developed separately in its own library or folder. Another thing to do is don't call things by the solution or project name, or the name of the company, or whatever it is you're developing. If you do that, it's not that you can't turn something like that into a package at a later date. It's just there will be a lot of renaming, a lot of namespace changes. It's going to be quite difficult for you to do. Another thing is to configure everything. So when you're writing a solution or you're just working generally, it's always tempting just to put the answers into the code as you go. So there will only be 10 of these, so we'll make sure there is. But especially with .NET Core, if you move all of your options into a class with sensible default values, you can at a later date make that something that is loaded as options for people, so that you've got your very generic, very specific solution, but with some options, you can help turn that into a package. And then the last one is code in the general. So code as if you're doing the general solution. So one of the packages I wrote was a queue that allowed you to stack things into a queue, and then they got published because we had a client who wanted to republish thousands of things on an import. So instead of writing a very specific import for them, we wrote a thing that did a queue, and it just at the end of the queue, it triggered code that was specific. So you could hook into this queue and run specific code. And so that became a package. But the solution was for the specific client was that little bit at the end that just did the thing they needed to do on every single item of content as it went through this queue. So in summary, I see packages everywhere. Back in 2016, I was talking to a developer here in Liverpool, and he was just about a general project they had with multiple languages. And he said to me, how do you do translations in Umbraco 7? And so I had a look at how you did translations in Umbraco 7. And at the time, there was a translation dashboard. But what had happened over the time is as all of the JavaScript elements and the grid had gone in, they'd basically made it defunct. And you can see it's quite screenshot. There's even errors on that. So I went back to him quickly and said, you don't, in reality, you can't translate in Umbraco 7. The workflow didn't work. And that's what led us to build Translation Manager, which fixes the workflow, handles all of the JavaScript elements that are inside grids and nested elements, and it uses standard translation libraries to talk to and from translation companies that you may want. I went to a talk in 2012 Umbraco Festival, and Pete Duncanson was talking about Site Builder. Now, at the time, we were looking for a tool that would allow us to have multiple developers working on a project at once. And Pete went right through the whole thing and gave pros and cons. And he said one thing that stuck in my mind at the time. He said, touch the back office and you die. So with Site Builder, if you went near the code, if you were building the code, it was fine. But if someone went and changed the doc type in the back office, the whole thing blew up. And we thought, well, that's definitely not the tool we can use because we had so many different developers working on the project. And that was the seed of Usync. That's where Usync came from. It came from the fact that we needed this tool for multiple developers. So that's great, and you can just develop like that. But there are a couple of common blockers that people talk to me about when they're saying they want to do package development. The first is ideas, and the second is time. So if you have no ideas for a package, but you really want to have one, my advice is to take a look around and see. So one of the great resources, which hasn't been touched in a while, but is still very relevant, is Lee Kelleher has a repository of package ideas that people can contribute to. And it's just a long list of, it would be great if Umbraco did this or this. Now, some of them are quite old and won't necessarily be relevant anymore, but some of them are great places to look for starting points. If you think you want to do something, go, that'll be a good idea. You can just pick it off and do it. Another thing I would do is I look at other CMSs, because obviously all CMSs have a plugin or a module structure, and looking at other libraries and seeing what they do. It's not that Umbraco doesn't do these things, because obviously it does, but there might be slight differences, and some packages in, say, Drupal just do it a slightly different way. And it's a great way to see what maybe you could do with Umbraco, or that could be a good package to take and do a different way. And of course, you should always check the Umbraco package repository, because not least, there's almost certainly something very similar to what you might want in there. So if you're thinking of writing an opening times package, my advice is don't, because there's at least 4 hidden in the Umbraco package repository. They might not be easy to find, but they are there. So searching that to find them is one thing to do. And equally, if that's not quite what you need, almost all package developers are open to contributions and for people to help them with their package, because they've put them there not only because they want to say, look at the kudos, I've got a great package, but also because they want people to help them and make their code better as well. And they will want to use the things you add. So contributing to existing packages is a great way to get started with packages. But ideas might not be a problem. You might have loads of ideas. Time is always a problem. So we're going to go a slight segue away from packages now and do a very quick time management thing. And I'll talk about how I manage developing packages and how I work out what I'm going to do and do next. So I have this idea which for want of a better name is called 2x2. which is 2 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, and there's 2 years as well. So the idea behind this is that it takes 2 seconds to have an idea, and really you should write them down. And then in 2 minutes, you can look at an idea and you can flesh it out and you can put bullet points and you can say what's good or bad. You can think about the pros and cons of an idea. In 2 hours, you can really go into detail with something on a package and try and work out how it might work. You can look around, you can spend that time researching, seeing if somebody else has done a package that's very similar. 2 days, you can write a demo. In 2 days, you can write a whole package. It really depends on how complicated the idea you have is. But in 2 days, you can certainly go through a package and you can work out whether or not it'll work. You can go into Umbraco's code, say, oh, yes, there's an API there, or that API doesn't quite work for me. In 2 weeks, you can build a viable product. You can build a viable product of most packages in 2 weeks. I've got packages that obviously don't take that long, but at the end of 2 weeks, you'll have something you can share with people and they can test. They can tell you whether it's a good idea or whether it works for them, and you'll start to get feedback and you can build that in. For really, really big things, you can polish a package in 2 months. So Translation Manager, which I think we'll talk about later, was a 2-month project for us. It went through these phases and we set aside a whole 2 months to finish a package. And at 2 months, we had a viable package that was finished. Obviously, a lot of work went into it after 2 months, but after 2 months, we had a finished package. So I manage my package ideas, for want of a better word, in my 2x2 board. So I have, whenever I have an idea for a package, I will just throw it into my 2-second column. And then as and when I've got time, I might take a look at them and put them in and spend a couple of more minutes on them, or maybe an hour or a day or two, just moving across. And you can see, obviously, I have a lot more ideas than I have things that I've done. So the reasons I like this as a way of working is that I can quickly note down my ideas. I just put them on my phone in Trello and they just go in and that's it. And I don't necessarily forget them. Some of them obviously aren't very good. It only then takes me 2 minutes. When I have a spare 2 minutes, I can sanity check something I've written and go, well, that doesn't make, that's not too bad. That's something I can do. You can reject ideas at any point. So spend 2 minutes on them doesn't work. Spend 2 hours on them and go, actually, it turns out you can't do that. So I thought about one, it turned out the APIs in Umbraco didn't quite work the way I thought. And after 2 hours, I realized that and threw it away. It means that I only spend time on the things I want to do and things that are possible. So it's a good way of organizing your time. So back to packages. Now we've done time management. So how do packages work? Here's the super short version of how a package works. A package is a NuGet file, and a NuGet file is a zip file. And zip files have files in them. I don't think this is rocket science at the moment. When you add a NuGet file to a C# project, .NET will copy the DLLs into the project. For Umbraco projects, there's a secret targets file, and that copies everything else. Essentially, everything in app plugins gets copied by a targets file. So if you ever create an Umbraco package from the command line, you'll see this file, which you don't need to know much about. Essentially, it's got a command into copy files from the package into your solution when someone does a .NET build or a .NET run. So Umbraco packages usually have an app plugins folder and a targets file, which we've just seen, to copy things when everything's built, run, and published, and then integration points so Umbraco can do things with your package. And that's it, really. I'm not going to go into great detail about how it actually works because there'd be a lot of code. But one thing I would like to sort of touch on is Razor class library packages. So Razor class libraries have been around in .NET Core since 2.1, and they were built as a way of using Razor views from a NuGet package in a website. So they compiled Razor views and other things that go from the package, and when you put it in, they appear as if doing it. In a simpler term, they're a fancy but supported way of getting ASP.NET Core to manage how your files are rendered in a website and not using your own custom, let's just say, targets file solution. So to convert an existing Umbraco package to a Razor class library isn't super complicated. So in your CS project file, you need to change the SDK from Microsoft.NET.SDK to Microsoft.NET.SDK.Razor. Then you add a secret static web asset base path to your project file, and that tells Razor the path you want your files to appear in the solution. So that would be your app plugins my project thing. And then you have to rename your app plugins my package file to www-root. Inside the Razor class library, at the moment, everything has to come from www-root inside the package. The static web assets base path tag actually tells it where it appears in the other site, but within the class, that's where they come from. And that means you can remove all the build stuff, all the targets, things from your project. And then there's a sneaky little bit of code you have to do at the moment to inject your package manifest into Umbraco. There is discussions on the Umbraco forums, and I probably will put the PR in, but it hasn't made version 10, where the package manifest could be read from the Razor views, but it's not quite there yet. So just quickly to show you this, and this is about as much code as we're going to do. You can see a static web-based path there on line 4, and that says app plugins my super package. So that's where any site that uses the package will see the files. And we've changed it to Razor. And then this is a snapshot of what the manifest filter you have to add looks like. So you put this in the composer, but essentially it's a C# representation of a package. So it's got all the same things as a package.manifest. It's got scripts and style sheet tags and your name of your package and the version. And when Umbraco runs your package, this will get added to the list of manifests that Umbraco discovers on disk, so that your package is also there, like it's a package on the site. If you want an actual in-depth example of this, USync's a great one. So the latest version of USync that will be released shortly after Umbraco release Umbraco 10 today will have the users and RCL for its assets. And so you can see that in place. There's a couple of projects, more and more people I think are using them. Umbraco itself, you might have seen in the keynote, are using RCL package now to deliver the Umbraco files, so they don't appear in your solution either. So very quickly, how that actually works is they use a targets file, except it's a Microsoft targets file. It's slightly more complicated than the one that is built into Umbraco, in that it defines these static web assets. And what that means is when you're developing your package, the files live in your package solution. And if you've got a website associated with them, they don't get copied in, they get referenced. If a web developer installs your package and is running it locally, your package files come from their NuGet cache. They don't appear in the website. They are injected, as it were, using a file provider. So they look like they're in the folder for the website, but they're not physically there. When someone does a .NET publish with a Razor class library, the files are physically copied into www-root. So if you looked at a site that had been produced with .NET publish, you'd see www-root/app-plugin/ the name of your package, and the files would be there. The great advantages of this is it's Microsoft supported method as opposed to what was cooked up. It's not that it was wrong. It's just, go this Microsoft way. All the files are not in the developer solution no more, so you don't have to worry about source control of packaged files because they don't appear. It means if a package gets updated, you don't have to worry about whether or not there are files that needed cleaning or removing, because every time the package files are pointed to as a different place in the cache. And a really good thing if you're developing it is hot reload with .NET Watch works super well. So you no longer need to have gulp files or anything copying files between your package and your test site. With .NET Watch, everything comes from your solution. If you change a HTML file or a CSS file, it will automatically reload your test solution even without you pressing the button. So now I've done the little Razor class library preach. What makes a good package? Like anyone can really tell you what a good package is. The first thing I would say is ignore this lot. Going off what the packages are on Umbraco and going, well, I need a good package, will put you off, because Lee's Contentment and Matt Brailford's vendor would, if you went off them, you would never develop a package because they're far too good. What actually makes a good package is the package you need or want. It doesn't really matter about the other things. If you need it and you write it, it's a good package. A good package does work with Umbraco, not against it. So I've seen this quite a lot. It's getting less because with ASP.NET Core, Umbraco is now much more doing exactly what the Microsoft way of doing things. But fighting the way Umbraco works with a package or a website just gets you into trouble. So it's not worth doing. And it's often simple and it does one job. So now let's talk about money. So that's probably why you're here. When you sell a package, you learn a lot of extra things. This is just from my own experience. You learn about support. It's not that I wasn't doing support of packages before I decided to make commercial ones. It's just once you've made a commercial one, the need to support them just feels much more, because obviously people are spending money and you're not going to say, oh, I don't know how that works when they come to you and ask a question. You'll know a lot about tax. I know more about international tax law than I ever wished to know. And you'll learn about licensing and how to license things and what licenses are like. And you will unfortunately learn about resellers. Resellers are the bane of my life, because they come to me and say, my client wishes to buy your product. By the way, will you give me a discount? And can you fill out all this paperwork? Short answer for that is we say no, and it's going to cost you more. And you will also learn about support. So talking about licensing, because there are lots of ways to license code, but when you go commercial, obviously you need a way of restricting the code based on licenses. My advice is to keep this as simple as possible and accept the fact that if someone really, really wants to, they will crack your license code. And there's nothing you can really do about that technically. It's going to happen. So don't spend longer on licensing than you do on developing the package. It's very easy. It's very tempting. I can see how it might happen. So for example, the translation manager license, we generate a key based on the license domains. There's some hashes in there, but that's what we do. Then when that license is checked, it's a check if that key is valid for the list of domains that are in the key. And then we check to see if the site is running on a valid domain. And that's it. That's all a translation manager license is. People think there's all sorts of things going on and we're pinging sites, but really, in reality, we're not. It means the licenses work behind a firewall, so it's always worth doing. So another topic then, how much to charge? So how much to charge really depends on a number of things. One is how long did it take? How much time are you committing to the package once it's developed? So how much support do you think there's going to be? How many do you think you might sell? Because ultimately we're going to work it out on that. And obviously, how much money do you want to make? Now, you could just say, I want to make all the money in the world, but it might be, I want to make a little bit of money just to cover a day or two out of my package. So how did we do that with Translation Manager? Well, we worked out the costs. It took 2 months to develop, and we thought it'll take a day a week to support and do the continued development, update it, patch it, keep it up to date with Umbraco. Based on demand, this is the hardest part. Translations is a small part of an already small CMS market. Umbraco isn't WordPress. It's not millions and millions. So it's still got an awful lot of installs, but obviously not the biggest. So we're talking about a very small element of that. So we thought 1 or 2 sales a month, that would be okay of a translation tool within that pool. And just in terms of what we thought if we recoup the costs in 24 months, so in 2 years, which is the final part of our ideas thing after 2 years, is it working for us? So that's 140 days development, again, over 2 years. So that's approximately half a year or a quarter of our time. Now, what we don't do is say that's for 140 developer days at a contractor rate. That's an internal what we value those days at rate. And so that demand will work out on about 30 or 40 sales. So price-wise, that came in at around £600. It was 5 years ago. Translation Manager is no longer £600. Inflation is a thing. So does that work as a pricing model? Short answer is yes, for us anyway. It worked for us on Translation Manager. Translation Manager probably is about a quarter of our income at the current time. If you're wondering how many you might sell for a package or something, one thing you can look at is sales versus downloads. So before I start that, it's worth saying that downloads is not instances or actual installs. In this case, when I say downloads, we're talking about the number on our Umbraco, which is a combined package download and NuGet download score. NuGet downloads double count because every time someone deploys a build, the package will be downloaded. So it's a much higher number than actual number of people installing. There are not 2 million using installs in the world. So for Translation Manager, we roughly see, based on this number, and these are rounded, 1 sale for every 1,000 downloads of Translation Manager. So I'll leave it as an exercise to you to work out how many downloads of Translation Manager we've had, but essentially we've had 1 sale for every 1,000 downloads. I thought we'd look at using complete as well. And the answer is actually surprisingly very similar. There is a slight difference, but not much. We see 1 sale of using complete for every 1,000 downloads. And given that it's nearly £1,000, that is £1 per download. But using complete is the paid version of an already free product. So I think we've got to compare it slightly differently. We see 1 sale of using complete for every 10,000 download versions of Usync. So it's a much higher number because Usync's the free thing everything uses, but roughly that's where we're at. Of course, we have 1.9 million downloads of Usync, so 1 per 10,000 isn't bad. And ultimately, someone's got to pay for the 8-meter high banner on the side of the building. So do you think you can do that? I don't see why not if you've got the right package, but it is worth making some notes about the packages we sell and how we get to the numbers we've got. Usync and Translation Manager are big packages. That means really a dev can't knock one up. You can't say, oh, I'll just write Translation Manager in 2 weeks. I've been there. It's a very big temptation in projects when a developer, we're our own worst enemies. We say, oh, I can do that. Hopefully for our tools, people see Translation Manager and go, yeah, I can't do that. And that's what leads to a sale for us. It's also worth noting that they solve business, not developer problems. So Translation Manager solves a business problem of getting your content translated between languages. And while Usync might not feel like it does, Usync Complete solves a business problem. Usync solves the developer problems of syncing site settings and stuff between sites. Usync Complete is a business problem of content editors going from UAT to live or QA to UAT or whatever way. And so that means that we're selling to the business more than the developer. We also price them in a way that means they can be baked into a project cost. So it's an upfront single cost. So someone who needs translations knows they can add the cost of Translation Manager to their quote. And when they go to the client, they say, well, this is your site plus Translation Manager. It'll translate all of your content. So obviously, depending what your package does, those numbers might be slightly different. I'm not 100% sure. I know, for example, Matt is selling Construct, and it's very early days, and that's a developer tool, and it probably will work because Matt wrote it. But I don't know. I can only speak from our side. We sell business tools. So in some way, I really don't know if that'll work for you. It might not. Finish off. Make packages you need. Look at what others do for ideas. Don't be put off by Lee and Matt. And you can make money, but it might not be worth the hassle, and I might not want the competition. Thank you.